Hey everybody, welcome back to another movie review. Hope you guys been enjoying the content channel as of late. Just took another day off yesterday. Just didn't really have a whole lot to not a lot a whole lot of content per se, but finally got a chance to check out this film. Just I don't know why I just not been in the mood of watching movies lately, but finally decided to sit down and check this out, and I now have my thoughts. So. That film that we're going to be talking about today is Jay Kelly, which was co-written and directed by Noah Baumbach. You guys may be familiar with movies such as Marriage Story, which I really enjoy, as well as some other movies here and there. I believe he did a film called The Squid and the Whale, as well as most recently a film called White Noise, which I was not particularly a fan of. But he's done other films here and there, and this is his latest with Netflix because he's had a working relationship with Netflix now for the past couple of years. This one stars George Clooney as the title character, as well as Adam Sandler, Laura Dern, as well as a few other players here and there. I believe Patrick Wilson is also in this as well at one point. And as the story goes, as the title suggests, we follow a man named Jay Kelly. And Jay Kelly in this world, he is a renowned actor. He is very, very famous. Lots of people know him. He's done lots of movies. And he's now at an older age. And he is becoming more self-reflective and trying to establish himself more so as a person, because as the film greatly depicts about the landscape about Hollywood and is just real life in and of itself about Hollywood, is there is a mask that you have to put on, each time, and there's two masks, as the film illustrates. The one of which that you're on camera, and then the one of which when you're not on camera, as a famous figure. And after a meeting that he has with an old friend, he decides to embark on a quest to go to Paris, where one of his daughters is hanging out with a bunch of friends, and he wants to establish a connection. And ultimately, through this journey, learns about his said connections with his family, with his friends, and seeing the consequences that were about living the life that he has lived for so long, and what he has ultimately lost as a result of living such a life for so long. So as I kind of said up front, recently with Noah Baumbach, I've had my issues. White Noise, I was not particularly a fan of. I think if I remember memory serves me, it was a bit long-winded, and generally just by what it was trying to get at, I just felt it was a bit convoluted. But I've always, Noah Baumbach, as far as I've known of him, I've only seen, admittedly, just two of his films, that of Marriage Story and White Noise. I don't have a huge understanding of his filmmaking, but generally of his films, Marriage Story, I actually quite enjoyed. I thought the performances were great. I loved just the attacking of its subject, how it chooses to personalize its subject. And in the case of Jay Kelly, the great thing about the film that I liked in comparison to Marriage Story is that there is that personal lens that is being utilized here once again, and in oddly meta ways as well, as you'll see in the film. If you've seen it, there's some oddly meta qualities to it that I feel are a bit tacked on, if you ask me. But there is a personal lens to this, and there's an observational sense to it as well, and it's all apparent, and I think that in the respect of what the film is after, which is again this person who is at a point in their life where they're now starting to realize, the actions of their own, self, why, them taking on the lifestyle that they have taken on, and what that ultimately means in relations to people, his relations to the world itself, how detached he is as a result, and how troubling it is for him, because of his ego, because of his arrogance. This is a character that is distinctly flawed, as much as he is starting to come to that realization, of the flaws of his own life. The things that are holding him back are himself and how he wishes to conduct himself, and ultimately just him as a very existence as it stands right now. And what I think the film does really well. Firstly, I think the performances here are solid. I think all of which do a good job. George Clooney, I think, does a good job. He has that stoic nature about him that I think works in the confines of what the film is after, which is, to represent that of a quote unquote movie star, the actor, that classic actor type, the very stoic, the hair's nicely combed back, and underneath, what all that, there is someone who is deeply insecure, somebody who is trying to find that connection. And you find that in that performance that George Clooney puts on. I can sense, him trying to build that connection, but then that arrogance every so often just comes around to cut off those ties. And then, in contrast, you have Adam Sandler in this, who I'm very happy to see him always branching out of the world that he does within comedy. He always dips back every so often. We had Happy Gilmore 2 this year, which was, whatever. But I'm always happy to see him doing films like this because he is a very capable performer, and he shows once again here that he is a very capable performer. It's not a very expressive performance, but it is, just by the work of what he is doing here, it is a solid work. It is solid work being put out, and I hope that he continues with the streak because I just admire what he's been doing for the past couple of years. Um, Really, reshaping his career in some ways. But ultimately, what I really admired about the film a lot, which I do believe is also in some ways a flaw of the film itself in some regard, is the way that it approaches its overall expression. Because there is a point to some distance that you feel within the movie, and there is a characteristic to that. It's a purpose. There's a purpose within that distance. It is to be expressing of that distance that the character possesses, but in that utilization of said distance, it almost feels as though that is also being put on the audience at the same time, where it actually feels like you are rather distant from everything in and of itself, from the storytelling, from that emotional center. It's apparent, you can see it, you can feel it to some extent, but you're not exactly there and as intimately as you want to be, because I feel that the overall utilization of that expression is a bit overstaying its welcome to some extent, and it need to be reined in a little bit more so as to give us more room to feel that heft, to feel that emotional center that the film is trying to provide. Absolutely. Um, and as I said, some of the meta qualities that the film presents, this happens at the very end. It just felt a little tacked on for me. It just felt like, I don't know exactly why we had to bring that up. It just feels now that I'm having to reassess what I just saw. Is it now, am I to now take this more as a personal passion project, or is this something of just trying to create some depth that really shouldn't need to be there in the first place? It just feels unnecessary and a bit just odd in terms of just representation. Um, but overall, in terms of how it leads itself through its tenderness, through this self-reflective and observational environment, there's enough resonance there to maintain, I think, a fair sense of depth and a fair sense of expression at the same time. I really like, and it's a bit surface level in terms of that expression, but I love some of the areas that we choose to move. Like I love that, like there's at one point where Jay Kelly is like in a forest and it's like a foggy forest, and I kind of like certain things like that where it heightens the expression and it gives you an understanding of like that he is so lost, within his own self, and in that there's also a huge flaw in that at the same time, and why he cannot bridge out of that. Um, and the performances there are good, and I think that the overall just momentum, just how we move through the story, I think is intriguing. But a point in that expression, even though it is purposeful, it is also counterproductive in the overall establishment of true connection and true emotion, which is also a point to the character itself. So overall, I mean, it's a good piece, but I just do think that some of that utilization of characteristics can become counterproductive um, in my overall emotional state, my overall emotional ties to the film itself. But generally, a good piece, and I'm saying this absolutely because of how I felt watching it. I actually really hope that this is the last time that we see Noah Baumbach and George Clooney. I actually really mean this because watching this, it acts more as an end, especially because of the meta qualities that come in there, which again feel unnecessary, but it feels like an end. And I feel as though, in the same vein of like Phantom Thread, where it's like, this is a nice place for you to stop. And if you're looking at this film in a certain way, at least in terms of why it was made, hopefully it's taken in that way. Because I think generally, in that sense, it's a good stopping point. And by generally what it is, there's a good sense of expression and overall just uh, fair film to sit with as in generally speaking. So yeah, so those are my thoughts on Jay Kelly. I thought it was good. I thought it was a good piece. Good performances there, and just generally by how I feel by watching it, there's a good aura built. I just like I said, I think a point in that expression can be counterproductive, and to some extent. But you guys, maybe your thoughts on Jay Kelly if you guys have checked it out. Your guys' thoughts on George Clooney, Adam Sandler. Like I said, I really think that this should be like this is like how you should. It's just like a career ending type of thing, like how to like bring it all together to some extent. I feel like it'd be a nice way to just cap off your career. Uh, that's just how I feel personally. But it's kind of an egotistical thing. But it's just a little thing that I was feeling when watching. I was just like, this would be a nice place for them to stop if they if they choose to. But let me know your thoughts about the film if you guys checked it out in the comment section below. And that's gonna be it for this video, guys. Thank you guys for tuning in. And until then, I will catch you guys in the next video. Bye.